to today's panel discussion. We have three presenters. I will let each of them present or introduce themselves, and they have, as Eric said, they have 15 minutes. So we'll just go in the order. I think we'll just go in the order that I was given your names in, and then which is Grayson, Gia, and Emma. Does that sound okay? Did I say everyone's name correctly? And then at the end, we'll have time for Q&A from the audience and from each other. So, all right. So Grayson, if you want to take it over, like Eric said, you should be able to share your screen, and we'll let you introduce yourself and the title of your talk.
All right, sounds good. Let me get my screen shared really quick. Let me know if you guys can see it. Okay, perfect. All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Grayson Dwyer. I'm a current junior at UNC Charlotte, and I am majoring in exercise science and health systems management. So this topic is something that's not only really close to my career and academic goals, but also something that's close to me personally and has a big part of my success here at UNC Charlotte. I'm going to minimize my screen really quick. All right, so today I'm going to be discussing digital communication and accessibility in the weightlifting discourse. So switching slides. I can switch slides when I'm sharing my screen, right?
You should be able to. Are you using PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's PowerPoint.
Try moving your cursor over towards the bottom left side of the screen. You might see little arrows come up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So the predominant question and/or proposal that I was looking at was, due to the utilization of digital circulation and the high cost, workout materials are difficult for some populations to access, leading to a decrease in fitness involvement. So just for the sake of clarifying, for workout materials, I'm specifically referencing programs, guides, demonstrations, and any sort of informational material that is going to shine light on some big fitness topics or ideas. So as I said, I'm a current undergraduate student. I'm also a weightlifter who recently has gotten into bodybuilding. So because of that, I wanted to identify the disadvantages of the digital circulation or cost of workout materials such as programs, guides, and demonstrations. Use a Google Form survey to get the perspective of students and staff on accessibility and cost within the weightlifting discourse and interventions that are happening here at UNC Charlotte, and organize and use the data to reveal what methods of circulation are most utilized and what efforts can improve accessibility and lower costs within the community. Again, just to clarify, there are some terms that were very unfamiliar to me at the beginning of this project and also can be pretty unfamiliar to the general population. So I mentioned discourse community in the previous slide. So a discourse community is a group of people who share basic values, assumptions, and ways of communicating about those goals. They are composed of a broadly agreed set of common public goals, mechanisms of intercommunication among members, participatory mechanisms to provide information and feedback, and one or more genres in the communicative furtherance of its aims. So an example of a discourse community can be as simple as your family, a class, a club. It can also be people in your major, or it can be more specific, where in this case, it's the weightlifting community. So to understand weightlifting as a discourse, you just have to keep in mind that weightlifting is known as a competitive discourse. However, there's still community-oriented aspects. Members of this community engage in health and fitness activities designed to improve their physical, mental, and social well-being. And data collection within this group is predominantly done through analyzing competitive and social events. So this is going to be like competitions, bodybuilding or powerlifting competitions, and then just general gatherings. So this also includes hearing the thoughts and concerns of members and non-members, which in this case is going to be UNC Charlotte students and staff, because that's who I'm going to be surveying. All right, so just to further shine light on how weightlifting is a discourse community, I decided to look into Lift for Life, which is just something that I came across during my research. So I was looking into Lift for Life to better understand the weightlifting discourse and why accessibility and cost are barriers to involvement amongst underrepresented populations. So just to explain a little bit about what this is, it's a proposed comprehensive after-school weightlifting program solution that makes physical education accessible to all students. This comes from the Journal for Physical and Sport Educators by Elazar, and they suggest that school systems, specifically middle school and high schools, don't foster an environment that prioritizes physical education. As a result, students in urban schools and inner cities in the US are deprived of this critical time. So in knowing this and knowing what a discourse community is, and knowing the application and in knowing what it means, I decided to survey UNC Charlotte students and staff to get their perspective on accessibility and cost within the weightlifting discourse, and to also see their thoughts about different interventions and efforts that are taking place at UNC Charlotte to improve these issues. So the predominant one is going to be University Recreation, which is our gym here on campus, as well as the gold bar lifting competition, which is something that our school hosted last year and is hosting again this year. But I'm not going to be talking about that today. It was in my research paper though. All right, so this is where I got all of my information from. I ended up creating a Google form survey and I sent it out. I had a total of 11 student participants, and then I interviewed 2 staff. So some of the data that I collected was out of 11 participants, 6 indicated that digital resources such as podcasts, pictures, and videos are most utilized to share workout material. The other 5 claim that social media pages like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and Twitter are most utilized. And that was in regards to digital circulation. So that was one part of the question that I was asking. The other part was accessibility and cost. And from those questions within the Google form, I discovered that nearly half of participants do or would face financial limitations when seeking out a workout program or guide. Furthermore, 27.3% of participants find it very difficult to access this information, and 18.2% find it somewhat difficult. So that was just from the student perspective. I also have included 2 quotes from the staff perspective. The first one is a staff perspective and the second one is a student perspective. So from the interview I conducted with the faculty member in my college department, they said that clients need to know how to safely work out at home, and then when facilities open again, as they are, it is important to make sure the information about why, how, and where to exercise is accurate and available to as many people as possible. And then from a student, I got, UREC provides great resources. The only thing it lacks is some level of guidance. It's not super easy to find and keep up with workout buddies, and working out alone limits what kind of gym equipment you can safely use. So those 2 quotes just reiterate the issue that I was trying to understand and how the people in my community and at my school are feeling about it as well. Takeaways and findings. So as I mentioned previously, Lift for Life was sort of my framework for what organizations need to implement to improve accessibility and cost. UREC, which is our gym here at UNC Charlotte, also benefits students by allowing them to overcome financial limitations and learn more about their overall well-being. As for accessibility within the weightlifting discourse, it is a problem due to a lack of guidance in crowds, which is UREC specific here at UNC Charlotte, but that also happens generally. And then from the staff here at UNC Charlotte, I discovered that accessibility, cost, and time are 3 barriers to weightlifting involvement. Also, accessibility has pros and cons. For example, a large sum of information can make it even more difficult for non-members and members to get involved within the community because they're not sure which direction to go. As for high costs, they negatively impact participation as the investment often outweighs the benefits. So the money that you're putting into getting this information and getting this education does not correlate to what you're getting out of it, both physically and mentally. Accessibility, cost, and involvement. These are just my individual findings from the data discussed before. All students surveyed believe that digital resources and social media are most utilized to share workout material. They are also most affected by financial, physical, and psychological factors when seeking out a workout program or guide, with financial limitations being the most hindering. More than 25% of students find it very difficult to access fitness information, and greater than 15% find it somewhat difficult. Conclusion. So taking everything that was mentioned in the last slide and the data from 2 slides before, this is sort of what I put together as not necessarily a solution, but just what I think needs to happen and what my data is showing that needs to happen within the weightlifting discourse. So as we know, workout materials are difficult for some populations to access, but that's not the most important factor. The most important factor is why. Why is it difficult for these populations to access? So through things that I propose, our distribution needs to extend beyond digital resources and social media so information is widespread. The cost of fitness facilities also needs to be flexible to represent all financial situations, not just those that are able to pay up front. Health and fitness material that is being made available to the public always needs to be accurate, up to date, and supportive of overall well-being. And then in investigating the different efforts that are happening at UNC Charlotte, I concluded that they are increasing accessibility and limiting cost hindrances. However, they need to be further investigated and improved to allow underrepresented populations to be further engaged. So in parentheses there, those are the complete list of examples and demonstrations that I looked into for my research. Today, I only discussed the first two, but they all are pretty cohesive in their goal. So 3 questions that I came up with that I'm going to be investigating in the future, and then I think everyone should keep in mind in regards to this topic, are following COVID-19, what in-person programming can take place to promote weightlifting involvement? Can payment plan and financial support resources be effectively implemented into fitness facilities? And amidst the tech era, what populations are still underrepresented in the weightlifting discourse, and what can be done to extend membership to them? Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Grayson. All right, as a reminder, we will wait and do our Q&A at the end after all 3 presenters have gone. All right, Gia, I will turn it over to you now.
Okay, let me share my screen first. Oh. Okay, can you guys see it pretty well?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello guys, I'm Gia Emis. I am a student here at UNC Greensboro. I'm double majoring in political science and international and global studies. I'm also double minoring in Spanish and Chinese. My research that I did was for a political science class, and I researched different healthcare systems. I particularly was interested in the Germany and United States healthcare systems in regards to their connection to the government and the government's power and control over their healthcare systems. So this is more of like a political discussion rather than like a health policy discussion. So yeah, my biggest question here was how far is too far in the powers of a centralized government? How does the government have power in the health sector and the health policies in a certain nation? So first, what originally made me come to this research and these questions was the demographics of each country. Both the United States and Germany are large, populous, and developed countries. They are both Western countries, yet they have different demographics. So first, we have Germany with an 81 life expectancy, an infant mortality rate of 3.19 deaths per 1,000 live births, a maternal mortality rate of 7 deaths per 100,000 births. And then a couple of demographics for the United States is a 77 age life expectancy, an infant mortality rate of 5.17 deaths per 1,000 live births, and a maternal mortality rate of 19 deaths per 100,000 births. Now, while these are some different demographics, they are very significant ones in terms of these kind of discussions and the relation to their health systems and the government's connection to them. So I wanted to basically understand why are these differences? Why do these two countries, who are both large, populous, westernized countries, have different demographics? And I wanted to learn politically how their government is involved in their healthcare systems. So first, I'm going to discuss the healthcare systems of both Germany and the United States. So Germany has 3 aspects of their healthcare systems. They have a private/public mixed entities in their healthcare system. So basically, part of their healthcare system is public and it's through taxpayer money, and the German government regulates that healthcare system. And then another part of it is through private entities, and the German government does have control and regulations through those private entities, but these private entities have a little bit more leeway and control in their aspects, and they're a bit more expensive than the public part of it. And then the German government also mandates health insurance to their citizens and provides 2 options for health insurance. So this means that all German citizens are mandated to have health insurance and to be covered. So the government is responsible for that. They give the German citizens options for like health insurance. These 2 options are called statutory health insurance and private health insurance. The first one, statutory health insurance, is the public health insurance that the German government provides. And the second one, the private health insurance, is through private entities. With the United States healthcare system, the majority of the US healthcare system is privatized, and many of the hospitals and locations are for-profit, and many doctors work for private organizations. The United States system of healthcare is not mandated. Rather, it is a decision based on how citizen salaries can afford certain healthcare. So usually, if a citizen cannot afford healthcare or health insurance, then they are not mandated or not required to have it, and usually they do not. And then the United States healthcare system also has Medicaid and Medicare for the poor and the elderly, which are very basic baseline healthcare systems made and come out of taxpayer money. So I wanted to analyze how these factors contribute to the demographics. How do these factors relate to the centralization of each government? How does government involvement affect healthcare and the demographics of each country? So first, like I mentioned before, I analyzed the mandate. So first, Germany gives their citizens a chance to choose between their programs, but they are still mandating that their citizens have insurance. They are responsible for their citizens to be covered. The German government is allowed to set capping prices, regulate procedures of the privatized insurers, and mandate health insurance coverage. Meanwhile, the United States has given their citizens the right to choose whether or not to be insured. The United States stands behind its original morals of personal freedoms and a decentralized government. Privatized systems are not regulated by numbers for profit or nonprofit medicine and pricing. So we can see the difference here and the correlation with demographics that Germany, because their citizens are mandated to have health insurance, most of them get the care they needed, which overall prospects like a healthier life for them and are able to be seen and helped when they need it. Meanwhile, the United States does not mandate it, which might lead to citizens not getting the care that they needed at the time because they can't afford it or they are not in the position to have health care. Then I came to analyze the costs. Out-of-pocket payments for German citizens average around 10% of the average citizen salary. This part describes like what comes from their taxes and from their salaries and taxes. And then they also have a 2-way system of private insurance, upfront co-payments of around 10 euros per medicine per day. So usually, because the insurance comes out of their income and the German government has these 2 systems. Usually German citizens for medications for doctor visits pay at most 10 euros to 15 euros per medicine per day. For the US, it is around 12,000 average per United States citizen per year. Now this is just an average. A lot of citizens are paying a lot more and a lot of them are paying a lot less. There's no mandate or no cost of there's no mandate which concludes that there can be costs that are higher upfront. And then they have co-payments of between $48 to $584, even with Medicare and Medicaid. So we can see that because of that mandate and because not a lot of US citizens are covered, we can see the cost for them being higher just to see a doctor just to get medicine than it is for German citizens. Okay, and then for financing, Germany's finance about up to 12% of the national budget on healthcare. So that's what Germans spend. And then they allow citizens to choose between more expensive and more privatized healthcare versus a healthcare that is more directly funded by the government. Hence the lower percentage on the budgeting for healthcare. So while they do mandate their population to have healthcare, they allow them to decide between the private and public. And since there is an option for privatized, they have a lower percentage of their national budget on public healthcare. They have that control and choice, but they have that control of those healthcare options, but they also give their citizens choice. In the United States, up to 20% of the national budget is on healthcare. 1/5 of the national budget is on healthcare, but most of its citizens have to pay a lot upfront. And this is because of the lack of control to reduce costs and the lack of mandate for the United States citizens to have healthcare and responsibility for their citizens to have healthcare. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on some accessibility. In Germany, since it is mandated to have healthcare through public or private health insurance, the majority of the German population has been able to have access to healthcare in any income level, in any like certain populations because of this mandate. In a 2014 consensus, around like 100% of the population was covered by either public or privatized insurers. And then yes, since most of the German citizens are on a type of healthcare, it puts stress on healthcare providers and having an informally rationed services. So we can see this in other westernized countries who have a more public covered healthcare, like Canada and other westernized citizens, where while the majority of citizens are covered, it can put a stress on the doctors and the services in the system just because there's so many people to provide service to. In the United States, it is not mandated, and it is the majority of the system is privatized. So there's no really easy access for low-income populations or minority populations. And we do have a system of systematic impoverishization and racial ethnic minorities, which can cause citizens to not be able to be in areas where they can have access to healthcare, in neighborhoods and that such. So now tying it all together with all these aspects, when a government is organized to centralize healthcare and have more control over it, it provides an overall better outcome factors of the healthcare and demographics of a population. You can see this in the German demographics and their control over their system of healthcare and their mandate and their control over mandating healthcare. Meanwhile, in the United States, their government control in their healthcare systems and not mandating results in, I would say, not as good of a health demographics as the German government. And that is my presentation.
Thank you so much, Gia. All right, we have one more presentation. I'll turn it over to Emma in just a minute. And then, like I said, afterwards, we will have time for questions from all three presenters.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Oops. Wrong screen. Can y'all see it? Is it? Okay, good. Thanks, Gracie. Well, now I gotta go back. All right, well, thank you all for coming today. Today we'll be discussing navigating sexual assault resources on UNCG's campus. I would like to offer a brief trigger warning about the content. I won't be discussing any firsthand accounts, but I will be discussing how the system at UNCG has gaps and sometimes students fall through. So if that is distressing, please take care of yourself first, and I'd be happy to reconnect with you at the end of the presentation. So today we will be discussing why we need to discuss this, what is the issue, what we can do about this, this gap, how can a public health approach and program planning be used to facilitate, and finally, what are the recommendations going forward with this? So what is the background at hand? So when you Google UNCG sexual assault, there's a webpage that comes up with a whole bunch of options. It is incredibly wordy and very heavy subject material. It has a lot of if this has happened, but this, there's a lot of caveats, a lot of things to really like read through and think through. And that can be incredibly difficult to navigate when someone is in the midst of a crisis, especially when we're talking about intimate partner violence. There's no one way to enter student-centered care. There's no locus of care, even though the Campus Violence Response Center is positioned as the center of care. So then the issue becomes the dichotomy of how the resources are advertised, accessed, and formatted online, and how the resources should be accessed. So the resources that I'm going to talk about today, and then I will later call them stakeholders in this presentation, are departments such as the Student Health Services Center, the Campus Violence Response Center, also called the CVRC, UNCG Police Department, Human Resources, the Title IX Coordinator and their department, and the Counseling Center. So what is the response and the disconnect? So the response in some cases can be a very harsh and judicial process, especially when it comes to more violent crimes of intimate partner violence. When we're talking about rape, many different departments may need to be involved. Varying levels of confidentiality are at those departments and may require retelling the incident when you're hopping from department to department, further inflicting harm. The student body needs accessible resources that are congruent across the board. The community is savvy enough to understand the difference between being thrown resources and true care, and the disconnect can be palpable. It's very difficult to navigate various resources online, especially if in a crisis. The stakeholders understand that there is a disconnect, but are unable to bridge the gap at the moment. So while I was taking Community Interventions 2, our professor, Dr. Peyton Foe, hosted a panel discussion with some of these stakeholders, namely the CVRC, UNCG Police Department, and the newly branded Health and Wellness Center. And after hearing from our class that the campus community does not feel equally included in their outreach about services that they provide and support for students, those three services articulate that they know they're falling short of engaging with every student. They lack the ability at the moment to go from where they are to where we need to be. So if we want to take a look at what the model looks like, this is what it would look like as it's posed and framed online right now. And it's very messy, and there are key things to understand with this, how this is positioned. So first, availability does not mean accessibility. There's identity politics and performance. There's power when an institution can say that they offer programs and services that others do not. And again, to reiterate, the community is smart. Students know when resources are not truly care-based. And this model is based off of tertiary prevention rather than addressing root cause. And tertiary prevention in its basic form is addressing symptoms rather than going back to the beginning and addressing root cause. And then various student services are noticing that this model does not serve its intended purpose or population. So as we know from the panel discussion, stakeholders are willing to come together to shift things and create a better culture of care for students. So this is a model of how it should be. Now this model is based off of space-time. So in space, when there's an object of gravity and has mass, it exerts gravity on space-time. So it's usually a planet, a star, something of that nature, and it kind of sinks into that net. And so in our case, that would be the individual. It sink into this net of care, this interwoven net of care, and we would hopefully, as it should be formatted and advertised, hopefully fall to the CVRC firsthand. And then the CVRC can disseminate where that individual will best access care as it should. So it's one locus of care, much less to navigate. You're just going to go to the CVRC. Student-centered care, the net supports the student as they need it, lets them roll to the departments that is needed with minimal hurt. And a key point of this is that all services are interwoven, which means that there's communication of resources and shared goals regarding intimate partner violence. The police department knows what the Title IX coordinator is up to and vice versa. And then, Student Health Center and counseling services and the CVRC are in tandem and they're all in communication. So it's really more of a built connection rather than single island hopping. So then how can public health be used to facilitate this approach? So program planning in particular can help. It's really helpful for providing a map of how to create a best fit approach for both the community and stakeholders. So we're going to talk about mobilizing for action through planning and partnerships, or MAP for short. And it's a plan that will take you all the way from gauging needs and assessing the needs all the way through implementation. And there's 6 phases. So the first one's organizing for success and partner memberships, visioning the 4 assessments, identifying strategic issues, and formulating goals and strategies. And finally, the action cycle. So the purposes of this presentation, we're only going to go through the first four. Numbers 5 and 6 would be actually putting this into practice. So we're going to go over 1, 2, and 4 first. We'll revisit 3 in depth in the next slide. So phase 1 is, again, who is that team? Who is involved? Why are they involved? We need to include students. If we're creating resources for students, it needs to be done with students. So who's on the team and the organizations, and why is this access to intimate partner violence resources important? Phase 2 is visioning and creating a vision statement for the stakeholders and that team of engagement. Students will have the knowledge of the CVRC and the self-efficacy to refer others to and to access resources themselves when dealing in a crisis. And then phase 4 is assessing strategic issues. So you're essentially workshopping what might go wrong, and then how can we best prevent that going forward, anything that would hinder or impede progress towards that vision statement. So strategic issues could potentially include general frustration, inability to connect with students, lack of interdepartmental awareness, and last but not least, laws. So when we're looking at the community assessments, we're looking at community themes and strengths, local public health assessment, community health status assessment, and forces of change assessment. So we really want to highlight what is already existing to better deepen and strengthen them to build the net of care that we really want. So the community themes and strengths assessment would be asking the community questions, where the questions are framed to catch solutions and strengths. So we want to look at what is the community, what do the students feel is working, what maybe we can improve on, what they think of it, all that kind of things. Local public health assessment would be the analysis of the functionality of the public health system. And that for our purposes, that would be UNCG, since we're talking about UNCG's campus. The community health status assessment would be how we would gauge health status and how we can use this to engage with students to create resources that they will actually use. And then forces of change is what might happen going forward, threats to progress, opportunities for the community and institution to come together and really work through this issue. Then coming back to strategic issues, we're really going to focus on how can we workshop these things going forward. So some of these strategic issues might include general frustration, inability of departments to connect with students, lack of interdepartmental awareness of what the other departments have to offer, what they're doing, how can we share resources and work towards the same goal. Not all resources are involved with principles of restorative justice, and hurdles and roadblocks because of laws could potentially be in the way. And these two kind of go hand in hand when we look at departments like the UNCG Police Department or the Counseling Center when we're dealing with, bylaws and laws that are constraining the police department, or we look at HIPAA and patient privacy at the Student Health Center or the Counseling Center. That can be a really restrictive environment, whereas some of the other departments and stakeholders like the Title IX coordinator or human resources, they might have a little bit more flexibility in how we can best approach a solution moving forward. So that would be really important to remember and see how much space we have in the box and how much space we can take up. And last but not least, if the university says no, the departments cannot create the resonance that they want. Truly, UNCG would have to support this as a project that they would want to take on in reshaping some of the pipeline that we have going on right now. So when we're looking at community assets, because this program planning builds to highlight community assets, UNCG has a variety of assets available and resources that are often used to celebrate and boost students and really highlight everything that we're doing on campus. In this case, our assets are commitment to recognition. So again, those departments that I've previously mentioned are acknowledging that the current system isn't working and are committed to improvement. There's a variety of departments that already cater to student needs, and most of them are student care centered. And then we already have these departments. So there's not going to be any time, money, or resources that are going to be needed to rebuild this organization. We don't need to get anything up and started. It's already existing. And then we're looking at tweaks, not overhaul. And this might be one of the most important assets, is that we're not having to, again, not build anything, not overhaul the system. Many of these resources are already acknowledging what they want to do, and we're going to go forward with it. So then where do we go from here? Next steps would be to take MAP and program planning all the way back to the beginning, but including the actual stakeholders, so members from these departments, and a student and a group of students that would be representative of campus engagement, and really focusing on building that webbing that would need to happen from coordination from the departments and encouragement from the university. So all departments and the institution would need to be on board to create that holistic student-centered care as well with students. We want to do it with the students, not to the students. So as we talked about today, we've reviewed campus resources and needs. Campus resources already exist and are willing to create change for our students. There's no need to overhaul the resources, but rather enhance and build upon strengths that already exist. And program planning can be used to showcase existing strengths in a community and provide the plan going forward to utilize those strengths to create solutions that will, again, deepen and strengthen the community. And that is it today. Thank you for the audience members that are here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions later in the Q&A or afterwards.
Thank you so much. All right, I will wait and see if either our audience has questions for specific presenters or if you all have questions for each other.
I have a question for Grayson. I know that weightlifting is a pretty male dominant space. The gym is in general. And I was just wondering how you've gotten into weightlifting and how you kind of navigate that space, especially if you're doing powerlifting and bodybuilding.
Good question. So ironically enough, I got into it from male presence, which for me, sort of worked out because it was my boyfriend. So, not too negative, but I ran cross country and track all through high school, and I was honestly just really sick of it. I wanted something different that made me feel strong. So I just sort of started going, and then I ended up meeting my boyfriend in a class, and he kind of gave me the guidance that I needed to sort of figure it out. And I haven't done any competitions officially, but I have done the lifting competition, which took place last year. So just kind of having that foundation to start. And I think our gym is very supportive of all different needs and different kinds of people. So I think UNC Charlotte does a great job of supporting me throughout the process.
Great. I love to hear that as another woman in the gym.
It's tough sometimes, but I think if the school can really do a good job of enforcing, the female presence, then I think it works out. I have two questions too, one for Gia, one for Emma. So Emma, I'll just ask them both at the same time because they're not super in depth. What platform did you use to make your presentation? It's very clean and very nice. So I was wondering about that.
Yes,
And
me
then
too.
also, did you say your major? I was just sort of wondering what previous knowledge you were bringing into this, because I had a couple ideas of what you might be concentrating in, but I was just wondering for sure.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I used Canva. Yeah, just kind of put it all in there and just kind of modified as I saw fit in the template. But my major is public health. So I took a class with Dr. Gringle, and we went through all different kinds of program planning. And then I just applied it to a gap and a need that I saw in the UNCG community. But yeah, public health is my background.
So that's what I was thinking. It was really good. I really appreciate what you were doing. So
Thank you. Thank you.
and then Gia, I know one of your slides was talking about accessibility in terms of healthcare access, and I was just wondering if you had any sort of proposals for a solution, or if there's anything that you've seen already done that could be used to implement some of the change that you were talking about.
Well, my research wasn't really on proposals or anything like that. It was more just research, but I definitely think Germany's model for accessibility and just mandating it and having those guidelines, and also having their government be more involved with the regulation of not only just public but private sector health insurance and healthcare providers. I just think would be there could be more specific resolutions, but I think it hasn't even begun, especially here, that I think just having the same outline and baseline that the German government has would help, would be a good start, I would say.
So I really appreciate all three of y'all's presentations, and you really I could really hear some, a personal connection or some kind of really deep interest in your topic, and I really like how all three of the presentations were connected, and that they really got at these issues of access and barriers in some way. And, just thinking about your different majors, how they connect to public health, exercise and science, and health systems and healthcare systems and political science, global studies, just really thinking about how access is different across systems. And so it's kind of interesting just for me to be able to hear how you all within your disciplines are thinking about these issues. I'm curious for each one of you, and so I'll ask this question for all three of you to respond to. Now that you have done this research, you've identified a problem, you've presented this problem, and obviously done a lot of research on it and presented it very well in the paper that you've written and the presentation that you've given today. My question for each of you is, what are you going to do now? What are your next steps? Do you feel like there's more research that's needed, or are there action steps that you're going to take to go to stakeholders who might be able to help with creating some kind of change or increase access? So that's my question. Just what are you thinking about now that you have this information? Where does it go from here?
I can go first. Ideally, the next action steps would be taking it to the stakeholders. And I actually had a conversation with the Dean of the Health and Human Sciences conversation this morning. And his suggestion was thinking of, since this is more of an larger system overhaul, even though I did suggest it's framed as tweaks, but it really is like a system-wide overhaul. To really think of like smaller actionable steps that I could then present to student affairs or anyone in either of those departments, and kind of take that next step to get the ball rolling. But ideally, after that, then it would be program planning through with all the stakeholders at the table.
Yeah, I think it was really helpful too in your presentation and your paper, how you identified what are the different systems that need to come together to talk about this, because it's not just one place that needs to be working on this issue. So that was really a big strength of your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to go, or do you want me to?
It's up to you. If you're ready, you can go ahead. I'll just follow suit.
Okay, so well, my research was more like in a broader, like international relations policy type thing, instead of like here, I would say like locally or anything. What I really want to do is I'm studying political science at IGS to work in the United States State Department in international affairs and embassies abroad. And I just think, well, I can't really do anything specifically because I don't have that much power right now as a student at UNCG. I hope that to work my way up and build my way up to have those connections and to be able to make change in these international relations and also make those connections so that certain countries can have models and can look towards other countries to use these systems and such. So I wouldn't say like, I don't know specifically what I could do specifically right now, just because my research was on a broader, more international and like global aspect. It's not even in like domestically. So yeah, that I would just say like my overall goal would be towards like making policy and like having those connections to be able to make those change in the future.
Great, thanks. I think there's a lot, even though, like you said, it's very specific to Germany and the US.
Yes.
I think even just people having an awareness, the public having an awareness that these systems are very different and access is very different across country systems. And, I'm just thinking about how many Americans aren't aware of, alternatives or, reimagining healthcare and, just being aware of and the implications. It's very clear in the implications in terms of life expectancy and, anyway, That was
No,
interesting.
definitely, yes. Definitely like the educational aspect of it is extremely important, especially with my peers and with myself. So yes, definitely like acknowledging and the education aspect is definitely something that can be pushed.
Thanks.
All right, so I think just generally being an honors college, as people are in this presentation, I have the chance at UNC Charlotte to do an interdisciplinary capstone, which I haven't quite decided which direction I want to go with that, but I think that after doing this research and having a chance to sort of apply this almost every day, considering that it's an environment I'm in daily, I think I am going to move forward with the interdisciplinary capstone. And I think it would be cool to take this to the next level and try to get more specific with it, because it can be very broad, but it can also be very, population specific. So I think it'd be interesting to sort of investigate the impact of the pandemic, because personally, I don't know if this applies for everyone, but before COVID, like, I don't feel like the gym even existed, which is crazy to say because that's, not true at all, but it really had a big boom, I think, throughout the pandemic. And it's something that's become super publicized and is a big source of employment now for a lot of people, which is great, but I think can also be very negative in the sense there's a lot of false information going around and there's a lot of exclusion. So that's something that I really want to fix, because I have felt that before and I know peers that have felt that before. So I think that's always something to work towards. And if I have a chance to sort of assist with that and alleviate some of that pressure that people feel, then I definitely want to be a part of it.
Thanks. Do we have any other questions for our presenters? Well, I think all three of you really expressed, you brought to light very interesting and important work. And I think also all three of you really demonstrated your capacity for doing research. And I could definitely see you all sliding very easily into graduate studies to extend this work. So I hope you will keep that in mind as you're working your way through the rest of your programs. Thank you so much. This was very enjoyable. It was great to hear your work. You all three did a great job. So I don't have any more questions. It didn't look like we had any others. So Eric, what should we do next?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Well, best of luck to y'all.
Thank you guys.
Job.
Bye.